I've shared the link on YouTube. So if you go to the Twitter page, you will then see the YouTube link. I like YouTube because I can share the what's it called, the slides that we're going to talk around and have a visual to sort of guide you as we go along, right? So that's essentially what. So if you go on Twitter, you would see the slide that we are working with, and then of course you can just simply just follow. Like I said, we're doing the macro side, right? And what we want to do tonight is to talk around those key economic indicators. We want to understand what they are. We want to understand how they play into the overall budget of Nigeria, and then how that is going to play into your own individual budget. That's what we want to do today. So let's start off. I'm going to share on Twitter because I know most of you guys are on Twitter. I'm going to share the slide that I want to use today. Sort of like it's a mix of both the CBN and Budget It. I want to just again thank them. Budget It does lots of fantastic visuals. So what I've done here is to take something from Budget It, and of course something from the CBN, and we'll try to put it together, right? Because that's going to give us what Nigeria wants to achieve in the year 2026. So if you are on if you're on Twitter, you would see what I have shared. It's the Budget It, and of course the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria's own macroeconomic forecast for 2026. Now, if we just do the space on just this slide alone, I think we are successful because this slide alone tells us all that we want to know about how Nigeria wants to set up its finances in 2026. And as you can see, it's going to essentially drive your own personal spending, your own personal budgeting, even the tax policies and all that. It's just going to drive you guys. So again, I'm just going to share on YouTube, and then we'll just start. And I think you're going to find it very, very interesting to see how these things all sort of tally. Okay, so if you look at what we've shared, right, you see on the left, Bank of Nigeria's macroeconomic picture for 2026. That's for the Central Bank of Nigeria. Then you see the key anchors for 2026. That's what the central bank is telling you is going to drive the 2026 economy for Nigeria. On the right, you see the summation, the summary of the budget for 2026. You see also the key projections that the federal government is proposing to have for 2026. You see the oil production, the oil price, the exchange rate, and then you see a summation of the revenues, deficits, and of course, where we want to spend. These two charts are your most important charts for 2026 because it tells you everything you want to know. It tells you where you should invest your money. It tells you what the government is thinking of doing in 2026. So that way you can sort of follow the money, but of course, avoid the bottlenecks. And you can see how realistic, if possible, right, the government's own plans are. If the government is not in set its effects, right, on the economy, on GDP, on output, you can't look at GDP without looking at, say, consumption or debt. They are all connected. So when one is doing well, it affects the other. When one is doing poorly, it also pulls down the other. So it's all talk around today. Now, if you start to what the central bank is saying, they are essentially saying that they want to have a GDP growth rate of about 4.49. And while I like the central bank's table, they will give you both the 2025 and of course 2024, and then give you 2026, what their outlook is for Nigeria. So we're saying we want to grow at about 4.49. GDP means output. Look at it as if you have a family. Your family has got 200 million members, and you're essentially saying that that entire family of 200 million family members is going to produce an output that, if you take to percentage terms, is going to be 4.49% for the whole of 2026. The problem is that your family is growing. You're having new babies of about 3%. So every year that family produces babies. If you take it to percentage, it's going to be about 3% every year. So clearly growing at 3%, but you are saying that your outlook, your output is going to be at 4.46. You're already seeing a gap already there. You are seeing that you might just have just a little bit left for your family to consume, because your family first of all has to eat. Let's say you make maize. If you produce maize, you first of all have got to eat that maize you produce before you even export that maize. So if you're making maize of, if you use percentage terms, 4,000 kilos, and your family is eating 3,000 kilos, you only have 1,000 to sell to generate wealth. So the 4,000 looks like a lot, but when you consider you have 3,000 kilos to eat locally, then of course it tells you that the economy is not really, it's not growing as fast as it should. If you look at context, 10 years ago when you were in 2014, right? The same household that you had, your same household was producing 6%, 8% output. And remember, the population growth then was still the same, 2.93. So when you produce 6 and 8%, you fed yourself and you had enough to export, which is why your economy expanded, which is why in 2014, that was the richest your family had ever been. So in Nigeria's history, 2014 was the richest that Nigeria had ever been. And that's why Nigeria was rich, because we had output, low inflation, and of course, the output was growing far more than the population. That's what was going on. And that's what you see CBN. CBN is saying that, well, listen, we're going to grow by 4.49, which is good because remember, in the last 2 years, we've grown less than 4%. So 4.4% here is actually an improvement on where we are coming from. The problem is that it's just breaking the population numbers, right? It's just breaking through that population numbers. The next thing is the central bank is talking about is the annual inflation rate of 12%. That's what the CBN is saying, that listen, we're going to bring inflation down, or we have brought inflation down from 38% down to 12%. Now, what is inflation? People think it's just very, very easy. Oh, if prices go up, that's inflation. Inflation is very, very difficult to describe. We see the effects and we call that inflation. But what inflation is very, very difficult to say what it is. Because it's two things. One, its price is going up. But two, it's also output not keeping up with demand. So when you hear Nigerians say there's lots of inflation because we're printing money, it's half true. There's inflation because we're printing money, yes. But the bigger cause of inflation in Nigeria is that there's no output. When the output of this family is not sufficient to feed the family. Hence, the price of that corn that they produce becomes expensive. I'll give you a clear example. If you go during harvest season to, say, Jigawa State, and they harvest a lot of onions, right? In that month of the harvest in Jigawa State, the price of onions will be 10 kobo for a basket. 10 kobo, not even 10 naira, 10 kobo. It's literally free. Irrespective of the amount of naira in circulation, the price of a basket of onions in Jigawa during onion harvest season will remain at 10 kobo. It will never go up because there's just so much onions around the place that you cannot increase the price of onions. You see the point I'm making? So if there were no onions in Jigawa and you then printed more naira, then the price of onions will go up because there are no onions and you've printed a lot of naira. So the scarce onions in Jigawa, more money will chase them. So you then have that inflation. But if you have sufficient onions in Jigawa, irrespective of what you print, the price of onions will stay the same. So in Nigeria's case, what's causing the inflation in Nigeria is not really that we are printing money. Yes, the Buhari administration printed about 22 trillion. But the problem is really a lack of output. That this family, remember, they are producing about 4.4. That's their output. They are producing 4.4 tons of corn. Meanwhile, their population is about 3.1 growth. So already you see very, very small window for them to eat. That's why the price of things are going up. Now, when you say inflation is going to fall to 12.9, you are not saying prices are going to come down. You are saying that the rate of increase in prices is going to come down. So essentially what's going to happen is this. The price of corn has gone up by 38%. It hasn't come down. But the income of this household has not kept pace, because the income of the household is still at that 70,000 naira a month minimum. We haven't increased minimum wage, but inflation went up to 38%. We rebased it back to about 20 something. Now we're planning on 12%. It doesn't mean prices have come down to 12. It means that the rate of increase of those prices has come down to 12. So imagine this household again. Price of corn has gone up by 38%. It hasn't come down, but their income is staying flat at 70,000 naira a month. Again, we're using the composite numbers, right? That's what we have. That's what the problem we have in Nigeria today. So we have the low output, we have the low inflation, but prices have not kept pace with that. Let's now go to debt to GDP. So according to the Central Bank of Nigeria, we're going to be about 34%. Again, this number is very, very good, because when you consider all the loans Nigeria has taken, we are still at that 30 number, either 31, 35. We are still at that 30 number. I think our target is about 30. We are still at 34. Not too bad, not too shabby. Again, the problem with this is that GDP does not pay debt, right? Revenues pay debt. And this family has borrowed so much, because remember, they're not making enough output. So they had to borrow. If you look at the chart on the right, you will see the borrowing for 2026 alone is about 23 trillion. On the right, you see the budget 8 deficit number. That deficit number means that we have to borrow 23 trillion. 20 trillion means you're going to borrow nearly 2 trillion a month. 2 trillion a month. I hope you can see my slides now, YouTube guys. Yeah, 2 trillion a month. That's the problem. So whilst the debt to GDP has come down, the actual revenues paying your debts is up. Nearly 2 trillion a month we're going to borrow in 2026. What about the FX reserves? The FX reserves are fantastic. 51 billion. We're going to have about 51 billion. This is a fantastic figure, because it shows confidence. So this family that is borrowing money to feed, in their bank account, they have $51 billion in quote, right? So when they go to the store to borrow money, they're going to say, listen, storeman, I just have temporary insolvency. I'm just broke, but I have money. I have 51 billion in the bank. So give me credit to buy food today. And the storeman will say, yeah, I see you have 51 billion. I can give you credit. That's what foreign reserves do. It's confidence to the naira. It's confidence to the individuals to go out and do deals, because you've got about 51 billion. Now, foreign reserves are not savings. Foreign reserves are not owned by the federal government or by the federation. These foreign reserves are really owned by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So I hear you guys saying, but the Central Bank of Nigeria is owned by the federal government. No, not really. The central bank is very, very independent. The one in the central bank is not owned by the federal government or by the federation. These are claims on the federal government, on the Central Bank of Nigeria for assets they brought in. So when the central bank sells bonds to the Europeans, it gets dollars. Those dollars go to the foreign reserves. That claim on that dollar is going to come tomorrow, right? So the central bank is saying, I've borrowed euro bonds and I'm going to pay back euro bonds. So that money is part of what they've borrowed and part of what they're going to pay back. So the central bank's point is that we're going to borrow money today, invest, create output, create growth, pay back with the growth created back to the euro bonds. That's where you see that 51 billion. It's a good number, but remember, it's not savings. It represents the capacity of that family to borrow. So that's a good number. But again, it's not savings. The family has got to attract what we call foreign direct investments and not just foreign portfolio. Portfolio is short term, direct is longer term. The last one there, I think, is the key, because if you guys do engineering, you hear them say critical path. You might have lots of processes, but there's something called the critical path, or the most critical thing in the economy or in the factory or in the household. What is the most critical thing in Nigeria? It's this: oil production numbers. It's the oil production, it's the oil price. But the oil production is what we can control. Nigeria does not control oil prices. Nigeria controls oil production. So the central bank is saying that we're going to produce about 1.7 million barrels per day. Everything I've said, output, GDP growth, average inflation rate, debt to GDP, foreign reserves, all depend on this number, the oil output number. So central bank is saying 1.71. If you go to budget it, in the budget, the federal government is saying they're going to produce 1.84 barrels. Forget the price for now. Just look at what we're going to produce. OPEC target is 1.5 million barrels per day. Nigeria is still at 1.4, 1.5. So we haven't even passed OPEC target, right? But we want to produce in this year 1.7. Budget's already saying 1.8. What's the implication? 1.8 in the budget is what allows Nigeria to go borrow nearly 2 trillion a month. So when you say you want to make or pump out 1.84 million barrels a day, that's you are saying I'm going to get revenues from selling 1.84 at $64 a barrel. That's what you're saying. And because I'm going to get the revenues, look at it, of 34 trillion, I will then borrow 2 trillion nearly every month. So that's the story. See the story now? Because you're going to borrow 1.84 trillion and you're going to pump out 1.84 million barrels a day and sell it at $64 a barrel, you are going to get revenues of 34 trillion. And because you get revenues of 34 trillion, you want to go borrow 23 trillion. So what happens if your revenues do not meet your borrowing or your forecast? Your deficit is still going to go up, remember, because you already spent it on salaries. You are already going to spend on salaries, but your revenues are not going to come in. You will always have 100%, should we say, what's the word now? You'd always achieve 100% of your salaries, recurrent side. Is the capital side that where we struggle, because you have to pay salaries, but you don't have to build the road. That's the honest truth. So when we look at these two numbers, you can see that Nigeria is basing everything we have talked around, GDP, inflation, on selling 1.7 or 1.84 billion barrels a day. Let's assume Nigeria sells 2 billion barrels a day. Let's give it Nigeria that. The Nigeria even goes far beyond what the CBN is saying and what the central bank is saying. Let's assume Nigeria does 2 million barrels a day. What's the problem with this number? Is the next number there, the oil price. Nigeria is budgeting about $64 a barrel. Now, just yesterday, we saw America invade Venezuela. And everybody has now knows that Venezuela has got the largest deposits of crude oil in the entire world, more than Saudi Arabia. But that's just deposits. That's not oil. There's no oil. Venezuela has no oil to sell today, right? The Americans are already in Venezuela. But what's the problem with that? China was the number one buyer of Venezuelan oil. So now that America is in charge of Venezuelan oil, they won't sell to China. They're going to sell to Americans first, right? So Americans will get cheaper oil, can export more of their own oil, because now when they get Venezuelan oil, they can blend their own oil and export more. Same with Saudi, they can export more. Russia and Ukraine are fighting a war today. If Russia and Ukraine achieve a peace, where do you think oil prices are going to go? Are they going to go up? Are they going to come down? They're clearly going to go down. Even if they go down to 60, your projections say you want to sell 1.84 at 64 to get 34 trillion. Other things are going to go in there. There's taxes, there's VAT, they're going to make 34. I get that. But Nigeria is a mono export economy. Oil revenues, and I like the way the CBN uses the word. The CBN does not use oil and non-oil. CBN uses resource income. If you go to Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, they use oil and non-oil, which is very confusing because according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, LMF Petrochemical Company is a non-oil business. Doesn't make any sense. How can a petrochemical company be non-oil? But CBN defines it in terms of resource revenues and non-resource revenues. So look at the story. If oil prices go down to 60, which can happen because today, what are oil prices today? Brent crude, 60. So Brent crude today is 60. Why are we budgeting 64? When we've seen Venezuela, we've seen that there might be peace in Russia. Because if we overshoot this budget, what then happens is that we are overshooting revenues. And if we overshoot revenues, what happens? What happens is that we then have a bloated revenue figure, a bloated expenditure figure. Again, look at the quotes. I'm going to just share again so the folks on Twitter see, but the folks on YouTube can see that quote there. Nigeria budgeted this year to earn about 54 trillion. And they wanted to spend about 54 trillion, revenues of 40 trillion. What did Nigeria actually get? 10 trillion. 10. So Nigeria wanted to spend 40 trillion. They wanted to get revenues of 40 trillion. They end up getting about 10 trillion. That's crazy. And that why did that happen? Because we over bloated our revenue figures. We said we're going to sell oil at $75 a barrel. And then we also said that we're going to sell about 2 million barrels of crude oil as well. And that's why we then overshot that budget, because we planned too optimistic. We said we're going to sell 2 million barrels of oil at $75 a barrel, which was just clearly out of nowhere. Never going to happen. So because of that, we have a deficit. If you look at that number, it's 40 trillion revenues and we only got 10 trillion. That's crazy. So let me just share that so the folks on Twitter can also follow, and you can see the folly of being too aggressive in your budgeting. Because if you don't do that, if you don't budget properly, that's what happens. So that's going to be my next tweet, guy. Just go and look at that quote. They're quoting Premium Times. It's from Budget It, and it just gives you the summation of what we're talking about, why we're having this space again as usual, right? So again, according to Minister of Finance, we had a 40 trillion revenue target, but we actually got 10 trillion. Why? Because the same thing, guys. We over promised that we were going to do 75 barrels at 2 million, and we only got oil price is about $60. So that just tells you what we're doing today is very, very important. We can't do budgets on vibes. We can't be optimistic about budgeting. We can't approach the budget the way we approach politics. You can't go and say, oh, I want to be positive. Let me be positive so people will feel positive. The budget is supposed to be a very, very cold number, a very, very conservative number. Because if you have a budget that says your benchmark oil price is $45 a barrel, that's fantastic. If you make more than 45, that goes to your revenues. Sorry, that goes to your buffers, your excess crude account. But if you don't do that, that's basically where you're going to have the problem. All right, so let me stop there. I've spent about 26 minutes talking. We're going to talk about inflation in particular. But let me get my good friend Cyrus. I've got Cyrus, I've got Sir Black. Sir Black, I'm adding you. I'm not sure what's going on. It's not letting you speak. If you want to speak around just what I've shared so far, looking at the Central Bank of Nigeria budget, and of course the federal government of Nigeria's budget, please do so. Cyrus, you've got the floor. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, good evening, Kalu. Wonderful space as usual. I'm doing very well. How about you?
Yeah, Cyrus. So what do you see, Cyrus? I mean, the point I've made today is that the budget number one is unrealistic because of the oil price, and we've made the point that the critical macroeconomic number there is the oil production number. They've brought it down now from 2 million to 1.8 for the federal government, 1.7 for central bank. But what do you think? Is this still optimistic? Are we still on the right path in terms of the macro side? What do you think?
Well, I think I agree with you on the fact that at least they are getting consciously optimistic, unlike 2025, where we had these ambitious budget that everybody was laughing at that is not possible. Well, probably they hit the inflation forecast in 2025 based on the base. They had 15% inflation target. But in terms of other metric like output, which are things that the base cannot do for you, you have to pump oil. You can't rebase oil figure. Yeah. They did not get that. They did not get that, and also obviously the revenue part that you mentioned. it was also laughable. But honestly, this year, of course, there's a little bit of disparity between what CBN is saying and what the budget forecast is in terms of production 1.8 versus 1.7, somewhere in between
1.71 and 1.84, correct?
Yeah, 1.84. So what I did not see in the CBN report is the price that they peg it at. The federal government peg it on at 64.85 barrel.
Yeah.
It's a little bit dicey because there's a lot of focus, particularly about 2026, 2027, the price of oil dovetailing. But you cannot really tell these things. Different things happen with nobody saw the Venezuela thing coming, and probably what we might anticipate, like in the first quarter, is that there might be some kind of just staying within the bandwidth of $60 per barrel, $64 per barrel. So it's still a little bit high. $64 is still a little bit high. I would have leave it at $60 or $61 thereabout. And given that Nigeria has a very high production cost, the leftover is also very, very low. So that's also a net advantage for us. But one thing I feel like, two things basically, I think like CBN probably were being cautious or being optimistic, I would say, as a central bank, is a foreign reserve. One, I think probably they are not projected. They are not. Of course, they are. The global inflation rate is going to go down, right? So you see big market like the United States, England, France, and others like that, reducing policy rate, NPR and stuff. And what that means is that there's going to be a redirection of capital.
Yeah.
And so if you are targeting a $51.04 billion reserve, currently you're about 46. Is it 46 now?
Yeah, about it's about
around 46. Yeah, around 40. For the last time I checked, was like 44 or 45. Let's give them 46 on gross. I don't know how the CBN intends to add about 5 billion increase in reserve in a year.
But it's easy. It's easy, Cyrus. If you issue bonds and you are paying 7%, you can get 100 billion in a year. I think it's very easy to raise your foreign reserve.
Yeah, but what we are saying is that they will do that at the same time they're going to reduce debt to GDP to 34.66%.
Good point.
So it's either you go to the capital market to get up revenue, to get up to get up debt. It's basically debt.
Yeah.
Or and get your debt to GDP increase, or you stay moderate and manage your reserve. So it's a bit dicey in that area. Yeah. Inflation figure 12%, 12.94%.
Don't worry, Cyrus, pause. We're going to talk about inflation specially. I have a special slide for inflation because that's one of the questions I get. People always say, is a number real? And then what is the effect of inflation in my budget? Because once we get these numbers, you then see how it translates to your own personal budget. But Cyrus, you made a key point in that I had done a YouTube video. If you want to watch and understand these numbers, I've done a YouTube video where I talked about the foreign portfolio investments and the foreign direct investments. And over 5 years in Nigeria has not attracted foreign direct investments. What that means is that we've not had long-term money come to Nigeria. All the money you see come to Nigeria is coming to buy stocks and bonds. It's coming from Nigerians, about 40% from Nigerians, but also from the just investors. So foreign portfolio investments was driving our foreign reserves. What happens if tomorrow oil prices fall? If you are a white boy, in quotes, you invest for your pension fund and you are chasing alpha, chasing yields, and you invest in Nigeria because it's an oil producing company, oil producing nation that has a lot of foreign reserves, and then oil prices go to about 59. You get spooked. You be like, oh, these guys might not be able to pay back. So you sell your Nigerian bonds and you take the money back. The more you sell Nigerian bonds, the more the yields for Nigerian bonds start to go up, which means Nigeria is borrowing more expensive. So that vicious circle of we are borrowing more to maintain the foreign reserves. So we have 51 billion at what cost? At what cost? We have to go and get more diaspora remittances or more dollars that do not cost us a lot of interest to keep in Nigeria. If we don't do that, We're going to meet our foreign reserve target, but at what cost? That's really the problem in Nigeria so far, that we're not keeping or not attracting long-term cheap financing. That's the problem. If we don't attract long-term cheap financing, it's difficult then for the CBN to then deploy this forex into local economy. That's the problem I see, Cyrus.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely that, well, it's not even stock. Stock is better if people are buying equity in companies and they are retained for a certain amount of about 80% of the portfolio inflow into the country, and that means that you are just financing your revenue with debt. So I agree with you on that. Another thing that people are not paying attention to is the money supply, because if people really cannot relate to it as to what does that, how does that concern me, right?
Yeah.
But Nigeria has not really been able to will I say put at bay or checkmate its supply of money. So what you see is that the increase in supply of money, for example, from 2023 till now, we had about 54 trillion naira in money supply in 2023. Now we had about 120 trillion the last time I checked.
Yeah.
And what that means is because the government keeps going to this capital market to release funds and stuff like that. And it's a very huge driver of inflation. You said something about inflation the other time, and two figures I started talking about in Nigeria, two main figures. Number one is the labor figure. It doesn't make any sense. You cannot have any conversion around it, because if you want to discuss figure, you have to discuss in context of how it affects the economy.
Yeah.
If you have 4% unemployment rate, everybody should go and sleep. Nigeria is doing well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And since yes, now everybody should just go and enjoy their life, because you have 4%. That means that in every 100 Nigeria, just only about 4 of them is without a job. So
Gotcha.
I mean, for 100 working Nigerians. So where's the conversation there? They literally killed that particular data so that people cannot talk about. There was a report by I can't remember one of these intelligence companies that says that about 5% of Nigerians have high quality jobs. That means jobs that have disposable income whereby they can spend on any other thing, they sell food. So
5%,
if that is the reality, and you're telling me that 4% is the unemployment rate, it doesn't make any sense. So that's why I started talking about it, because it doesn't. And the second one that NBS did recently, which is the inflation figure, and I've spoken about it, in details on another place. You also have spoken about it, that you can't tell me that inflation dropped from about 32% to about 14%. Was it not 40% at the end of the year with November inflation figure? And then you do not see that in NPL. You do not see that in any drastic drop in prices of any of the goods and services. And then you didn't see that in reduction in money supply. Yeah. Right? You didn't see that in any of the metrics that determine how inflation should be measured. Yeah. But you want me to believe, because you are a data authority for the government, that inflation has dropped drastically, to 10%, so to 14%. So the inflation does not make sense, Kalu. I don't know what to say about it, but the 10% is a bit realistic for the CBN Pasha.
Yeah, but Cyrus, we'll put the inflation figure up now. So we've shared inflation figure on Twitter and on YouTube. So let's look at the inflation figure. We've fallen from 34.6 in November last year, 2024, to 16%. So from 34 to 16, that's what we've gone down. And we're targeting 12%. So again, it's difficult, because when we're finance professionals, we don't want to talk bad about the data agency, because that would mean that, you are talking bad because you don't like the numbers. But again, I ask people that are listening on this space, if you had a child and that child did not work from Monday to Saturday, then on Sunday, that child went downstairs and washed the car, maybe your car or the neighbor's car, and the neighbor paid him whatever, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 100,000 for washing his car. He didn't work from Monday to Saturday. On Sunday, he took 1 hour, washed the car, and got 50,000 naira. Is that child employed? That's the question. if you said that child is employed, then you are siding with the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics that says if you work 1 hour in 1 week, you are employed. Doesn't make any sense. We don't do hourly work in Nigeria. You know, they are copying America, but Americans do hourly. We don't do hourly. Number two, 1 hour in a week. Is that how Americans define their own unemployment? 1 hour in a week, and that's if you are looking for. So the number it doesn't pass the smell test.
We don't do hourly minimum wage either.
We don't do all that.
If you are going so if you are going to use the metric hourly output of work, therefore you are going to use hourly minimum wage. What we use as a minimum wage metric is a monthly minimum wage. So our minimum wage model already assume that people work on a monthly basis.
Let's assume that guy gets paid 70,000 minimum wage for washing a car. Let's assume that is happening. But is that guy working 1 hour it doesn't work Monday to Saturday, works 1 hour on Sunday? Are we really saying that guy is employed? You know, is that the argument that the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics wants us to believe? Really? That guy is employed? It doesn't make sense. By text is employed, but it doesn't make any sense. So look at the numbers again. So inflation has gone from 34% to 16%. The question is why? Why have inflation dropped down? I've explained this numerous times. When we measure inflation in Nigeria, we're using what we call the consumer price index. All that is that we take a basket, we put things in the basket, and then we measure the rate of rise of that basket. So what's in Nigeria's basket? We have MTN, we have DSTV, we have shoe, we have this, we have food, tubers of yam, pepper, rice. Food used to make up 51% of that basket. So if you measure inflation in Nigeria, 51% is food, which means if food goes up, the basket goes up, inflation goes up. So what the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics do, they rebased the basket. That's what that rebasing you hear means. They rebased the basket. They took food from 51% to about 40%. So now when you then have price of yam and rice go up, it only affects the basket by 40%, not by 51%. Because of that, inflation starts to go down. Number two, if you also import a lot of food, you are also bringing down that 40% in that basket. That's why you see inflation going down, but the central bank not really responding because they understand that the prices are coming down. The CPI is coming down because you are importing food and you have rebased the basket. It's not my words. If you go to the last CBN report, page 10, you will see the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics say, NBS say, that the rate of inflation has gone down because of the rebasing. I'm not the one saying it. The NBS themselves are saying it. So if we have that picture that inflation is not falling organically, it's not an organic fall in prices. It's not like in that market in Jigawa, there are more onions being produced. No, it's that they are not counting those onions. They used to count them 51%. Now they're only counting them 40%. It's just like if we're watching Arsenal, Chelsea, or whatever. If you say you're not going to count goals, you're going to count free kicks, you've changed the whole game. That's essentially what's going on with inflation. So, and it's a problem because, like I said at the very, very top, if inflation was 34%, that means prices went up. Just say by a factor of that 34, right? If they've come down, if the CPI has come down to 16%, prices have not gone down the same. It just means the rate of increase has stopped going up and has now slowed down to 16. The goods you see in the market that the prices are going down are imported. The rice has gone down in price because it's imported, but the local production of food hasn't gone up. So we're using our foreign reserves. We're borrowing dollars to import food and we have cheaper food. Not a bad idea. I basically say it's a good idea. But what's the end goal? Is the end goal to be short-term and then get the military boys to go take care of the insurgency so the farmers can go back to the market? Or are we just doing this because we want to just win the next election at a lower inflation numbers? Because we just can't have inflation that the interest rate does not come down. Again, if you're a borrower, if you're an SME guy, you're a CEO, you run your own company today, you know if you go to the bank has not reduced your interest rate. They have not. So what is the point of having inflation go from 34% to 16% if you cannot go to a bank and say, oh, inflation has gone down, so I want you to reduce my interest rate? If it's not reduced, then it doesn't make any sense. Cyrus, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like any thinking Nigerian who like just pay attention to what's going on will tell you that that's the case. Yeah, so there's nothing that anyone is going to tell you that, oh, is this, is that. It's not true. You are tinkling with the figures, and it's so painful because it does not solve anything and all that like that. If you're not doing that and you're just tinkling numbers and you're thinking that you're doing something,
or which is a better way to classify it, because the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics does, I want to be polite, the way they are classifying this is totally wrong. LMF Petrochemical, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, is a non-oil company. It doesn't make any sense. How can a petrochemical be non-oil because they don't sell crude oil? It doesn't make sense. We're deceiving ourselves on that note.
Yeah, so they did 98%, and then even if you look at the non-oil, the real non-oil now, according to the CBN, only about 43 or so percent of it comes directly from taxes, right? The rest came from the independent sources from government, that most likely oil licensing, all these other things that they get money from, all those external funding and things like that. So what that means is that a huge chunk of our revenue, even if 200,000 out of it per day, and if that would take another local refineries, it doesn't change any prices, it doesn't disrupt the market, it does not cause any other issue. The problem is lack of production. There's no peg on what you can produce. It's just go on.
Let me put you on the spot, Sarah. So if you were advising, if someone came to you and you were advising the person, right? And the economy, this person works in Nigeria. This person is a banker. His wife works for the government. So his wife earns money from the federal government. This banker guy earns money from the productivity of Nigeria. And they are both telling you they want to go into this new project next year. They want to borrow money to invest project, right? And you are looking at these numbers that is saying that the revenues of Nigeria are going to come from resource-based. Then Nigeria is going to also borrow. And you are saying that the revenue numbers might not jive, that the revenues might not happen. So that means their source of income, which is the government, the bank guy's source of income is the economy moving. And the economy might not move. There's no oil. The lady works for the government. She might get, but it might be delayed. There might be no allowances. How would you approach your advice to this couple? Would you tell them, sure, go ahead and borrow, be expansive? Would you say be cautious? I think the clouds out there are getting darker. How would you approach your advice to this?
Yeah, so my first advice would be, you have to wait till like second quarter of 2026 to have rate cut. At least the best time to invest in Nigeria is only yesterday. So there's no, if
you are saying that the CBN is going to cut rates in 2026, and that this cut,
I don't have to say, they said it themselves. I don't have to say
it to 23. So
and then we'll see how things move. Of course, they themselves are obligated to macroeconomic fundamentals. So if the fundamentals are changing, in a good direction, the current CBN is out there, to disrupt things, so they are going to consider the fundamentals, and what exactly, so that would be one of them. What exactly is the inflation figure at the end of P1, and other fundamentals like that. Also the global economy, because the rate also affects, one of the things that they are using the rate to do is to drive capital to the country.
Gotcha.
And so they're going to look at the global economy and things like that. So all of those things are going to play that. So I would say, if you want to invest in Nigeria, if you have the loan at 30%, 32%, go ahead and do it.
Wow.
But if you are someone with limited capital, with limited financial firepower, I would say you wait a bit, get a loan, and then look for the climate to invest, and also look for the sector to invest. So where exactly is some kind of activities going on in Nigeria now? The first one is real estate.
Cyrus,
in some of
30%. You wanted to borrow at 30%.
That is the rate. That is the rate currently.
I mean, if you do real estate at 30%, I mean that's 30% annually. So if they borrow $1 million, they are going to pay back 300,000. They're going to pay back first year before they build a house. They're going to pay back to the bank 300,000 naira. The house will not be built in 12 months. By next year, they're going to pay to the bank 600,000 naira. So then, if they borrow $1 million, they're going to pay to the bank in 24 months 600,000 naira. Abi, explain to you.
It's plenty now, absolutely.
Cyrus. Okay. Cyrus, don't go anywhere. I want to come back. Somebody's asking me a question. Kalu, you haven't talked about the tax reform. The government is going to get a lot of revenues from the tax reform. If you look at the CBN chart we shared, look on the right-hand side, you see key policy anchors. The key policy anchors for the government is the FX reforms, the PIA, that's the oil thing we're talking about, the tax reform, and of course, the banking sector recapitalization. So the CBN is saying all four are going to drive these macro numbers. But you are right. Why haven't we talked specifically about the tax revenues? Because the CBN, when they do that table, they put resource and non-resource. If you look at that table, all your VAT, CIT, custom duty is quote-unquote nothing when you compare it to the revenues that come from resource side. So VAT sounds a lot. Because it's nothing because it goes to the states. Let's be clear here. The states as a block get more money than the federal government, the states. But the federal government is one body. The states are 36 bodies. So I think the mistake this federal government is doing is doing projects without holding the states to account. If the states are getting nearly 90% of VAT, and the federal government wants to build a road from Lagos to Calabar, if I was President Tinubu, I would say if the road is going to pass through your state, you must commit 40% of your VAT to the coastal road. If you don't commit, I will not build under your section. So if I'm building the road from Lagos to Calabar, if Akwa Ibom will give me 40% of their VAT for the road, I'll start Akwa Ibom section. If Edo will give me, I'll do Edo section. The ones that will not give me, we'll wait. We'll get to you. We'll come to you. Just wait. We'll come to you. But I wouldn't take my scarce federal government money and start to build a road that the states will enjoy and do VAT. You've got to bring the states in. That's the mistake Mr. President Tinubu is doing. It's the same political party, Abi. Why are governors leaving their parties to go to the APC if you cannot then have an APC economic plan? From Lagos to Akwa Ibom, you are going to pass through all APC states. From Lagos so Lagos is APC, Ogun is APC, Edo is APC, Delta is APC, Akwa Ibom is APC, Cross River is APC. So why can't those APC governors create a coastal road fund, put 40% of their VAT going forward into that coastal road fund? The federal government will take 40% of its oil royalties or 100% of oil royalties, put into the coastal road fund. That fund then pays the contractor or guarantees the contractor, allowing the contractor to go out and borrow money, knowing that he has got money there. So when the China guys see that kind of, oh, these guys have got 40% still in the fund, they will fund him. That's the mistake they're making. The tax revenues are high, but they are not going to the federal government alone. The states are taking more of the tax revenues, but the states are 36 entities. The federal is one entity. Austin, Cyrus, hang on there. Austin, how you doing? Austin, hop right in. What's on
to say that they don't have when I heard about you that our CPI was rebased, and I was asking this consumer
price index. Rebase anytime you want. Why you rebase is that you rebase to the realities of the situation. So let's say your CPI, for instance, had yam, but now you are eating Indomie. So you change the weight of your CPI from yams to Indomie. That's the whole idea. Situation on ground where the consumers are spending. So if consumers are spending,
you're absolutely correct. Even to add to this, that why about 30% of the import of output comes from import, and import basically is a federal government revenue, is a federal government money. Let me put it that way. A huge chunk of it still go back to the state. So this, I think right now, given the new tax reform, the state is going to get 10%, right?
No. The federal gets less. The federal gets 10. The state gets and local governments get everything.
The state and the local get the rest. So
90%. 90%. If you why hasn't Tinubu said this?
They would not use the money for that. I would be happy if the Nigerian government, Nigerian subnational government start using their money for what it's supposed to use it for. The problem has never been on the subnational level, at least at the state level, not the local government level, but at the state level. The problem has not necessarily been low revenue. The problem has always been that, and what that simply means is that the state does not care about projects. The state does not care so and forth over it is that they want in power.
In the history of China to the same caliber, largest contract, foreign contract to many firms to build the east to west road, to go from the same 3 separate projects. This is just the latest iteration. It's the same project. We just called it coastal project. It's the same east to west road. They've moved the thing closer to the coast or away from the coast as far when they can build. But the point I'm making is, if you have its bridges, it's no longer a coastal road, it's a coastal bridge. That's why it hasn't been done all these years, folks. It's not a coastal road, it's a coastal bridge. Where's the money? They're going to have to toll that road. Toll it to who? Who will pass that road and toll? Why would they pass through a coastal road when they have a road on the mainland? Have you guys thought about this carefully? Why do you think they haven't done it before? Why do you think the Obasanjo road wasn't built? Why? Why do you think Goodluck's train wasn't built? Eventually, that coastal is going to come back to the east-west road. And that road it will almost triple Nigeria's GDP. If you have a functional road going from the west to the east, you get trade, you get VAT, you get commerce. Nigeria's GDP will just double, trade will double, growth will double. So it's a strategic project. We want it, but you're not funding it right. If you don't get the states to fund that road, it will not get done. Austin, did I answer your question about CPI? You're good, Abi. Cyrus, yeah.
Oh yeah, I am.
Fantastic. Cyrus, we're back to this politics thing you are saying. It makes political sense to build the road. So APC can boast that they've built the largest road infrastructure in Nigeria's history. They can boast. So why aren't they doing it?
Well, I think another thing is that the governors so they have that thing to hide behind and say this is not their responsibility, and they don't have the constitutional power of their position that the road belongs to the federal government and they should do that, and they have other roads within their subnational
a road that will double their GDP. Because imagine now in Edo State, if you have that road in Edo State, that would mean that all the trucks passing from the river state have to pass through Edo to get there. All the trucks, all the trains, all the goods. If you just simply do weighbridge, or whatever, or do hotels. On the road, you just do hotels. I posted Cyrus this week how America built the transnational train. They built a rail track from the Atlantic to the Pacific across America. How did they do it? They didn't tax anybody. The federal government simply went to the railway companies and said, we're going to give you 60 kilometers on the side of the rail track. 60 kilometers. So as you build, you get 60 kilometers, it's yours. So what do the rail companies do? They would build the rail track, they earn 60 kilometers of real estate for free, they sell to developers. Developers will then use the same train to bring in their wood, their cement, their workers on the same train. So the train companies got revenues from the developers. Developers got land at a cheap price to build homes. And then the Americans that got those homes then got cheap homes, rode on those trains, and went into the interior to live. One policy, they kill 3 birds with 1 stone. We can do the exact same thing in Nigeria. The government can say we have a right of way because land in Nigeria is owned by the state governments. Land is owned by the state government. So President Tinubu can call, we're going to give right of way on, we can't do 60 kilometers, but we can do, even if it's 10 kilometers, we're going to do 10 kilometers on each side of the coastal road. And if you build that coastal road, you own that 10 kilometers. What are you going to put on that 10 kilometers? Hotels, filling stations, repair yards. Because there's going to be so much volume on that road that they're going to be, you drive into a motel. So if I own a hotel, what can I do? I will then go to my state governor and say, hey, state governor, I want to contribute for this 100 kilometers. And more people will come and keep on buying 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers on that road. The state can then complete the whole and go to Tinubu and say, hey, President Tinubu, we want to build 100 kilometers of the coastal road in our state. You done. We're not thinking out of the box. We're waiting for the federal government to send Julius Berger to build the road. We're not thinking out of the box. Let me get a Nnamdi. Nnamdi always has some brilliant ideas. Nnamdi, hi, what's up, man?
Kalu, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing very well, sir.
Thanks as always for the insights and the perspectives. You just said right now, can borrow. And then we also now layer on the fact that about 40% of our youth, anywhere between 50 to maintain it.
I hear you.
And then you just talked about, okay, so where's the tax revenue going to come from? If you are not optimizing the commercial utility of that road, how are you going to generate the tax revenues in order to maintain it? And this is part of the problem that we have in Nigeria in general.
I hear you.
And this is why our road infrastructure is the way it is, because it's one thing to build it, it's another thing to maintain it. Now, this leads to my metaphor.
Now let's address it, because it was a very good question. A lot of people liked your question. Let's address it a little bit, right? Let's go back to the American example, right? The folks that left from the east coast of America to the western, to inhabit the western as farmers, as homesteaders, they used that land, and that's all. America gave land for free.
Absolutely.
Now,
yes.
Nigeria has got, I think the last time they did this study, they said about 7 trillion. The last time this was done, there's a guy called Hernando de Soto. He's from Chile. He has this idea that lots of people in poor countries, including Nigeria, are not poor. They are simply not, they have land rich, but they are poor in terms of cash. Because in Nigeria and other countries, we say if you a land use act, that land is not his. What that means is that he cannot go to the bank and get credit to buy a tractor to farm that land. So there's Hernando Soto in Chile. Try this example. The Chilean government tried example based on what he wrote. That they said they simply took land and gave to poor peasants. They gave them the title of the land. And those peasants took that land. It was now their asset, black empowerment, whatever. The same thing Americans have tried. It's been done in Australia, where if you give land, saying is this, that land on that road. Today, if you go to my village, land is cheap because there's nothing in my village. But if tomorrow you find something in my village, maybe they find a dinosaur skull in my village, and you both come to my village, land in my village become more expensive than Asokoro because there's demand for it. How do you create demand for land? You build an intercontinental highway on that land. When you build it on both sides of that road, you give it away to folks that can invest today. Look at what you're doing today. Las Vegas was a desert till someone built a strip. Las Vegas was a desert till someone built a strip. Now it's Las Vegas. If you put a road, the side of the roads repaired, you've doubled the value of that land. Who owns that land? The state. If the state is smart, the state can carve out land on that entire stretch of the road, front and back. And the state will then say, even if we don't sell it today, we're going to create a land bank. This land bank will assertize or securitize that land certificate. So from thin air, Edo State will create trillions in the bank from thin air.
Hold on a minute. So first of all, not a single thing of what you said is part of the government's long-term plan.
But that's what we're saying. That's what we're saying then.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that we have to be careful with that, because we're making assumptions and attributing economic growth to things to plans that are not even existing.
Namdi, we are saying we're on the right, we're on the same side. We are saying that the government wants to grow at 4%. Then we said that they want the largest practice doing it properly. They should do it this way.
Right, but I would actually go to challenge you one more step. I don't really think it's a function is that we invest in infrastructure before we invest in the people.
That's how it's done everywhere in the world.
I disagree with that, because and I think it's difficult to argue against me, because look at the results of our economy today.
I can give you examples.
Since 1960, we have continuously invested in these white elephant projects, because, by the way, the road that they're building, they may not even do it up to par. We're assuming that they'll build that road and they'll do it up to par, which is not a given in the Nigerian context. So you're investing in that road, but you're not investing in the people to optimize the usage of the road.
No, we can chew gum and walk. And again,
at the same time, we can't in the African context. And again, you can't.
All right, now you got it all wrong. Economics does not wait. We in economics, see, look at how the government should operate. The government's budget should go to health and education. The government should get the private sector to the road. We can't wait till we can't build schools.
Fantastic. Right? Now, hold on. You just said something that I agree with.
Let me land. We can't build schools, and then when we build the schools, we start building roads. No, we can do both at the same time.
No, fantastic. I actually agree with you. What there is there needs to be delegation of economic growth and economic activity. There, education, etc.
Yes.
You can build that road to thy kingdom come. You're never going to maximize the commercial.
But that's if you go to any road in Nigeria that passes through the poor farmlands, what do you see? The farmers come out of the bush, go on that road with their keke, go out.
I'm a small business center. I'm using Tokumba and keke to go invest in people who can access the global economy, by digital economy, etc. Your pathway to economic viability, to economic maximization is a lot quicker than going to do this. You're building this road around those areas. What am I going to do with that? I'm not going to do it. But if you give me the education, you're making the same mistake. We submission that. Thank you.
Okay, so I didn't want to. I wanted to get to say so. Economics does not work this way. When the Americans were building the train, they didn't wait till the poor homesteaders were educated. They built the railway. The poor homesteaders got on the railway and went to the west, got that land, farmed. Then their kids became educated. Their kids, not them, their kids. You've got to build infrastructure irrespective of the education and the health of your population. The question is, who should build it? The federal government does not have the money to build infrastructure in Nigeria. So the federal government should focus on health, education. The federal government should then create the policies to attract private capital to build the infrastructure. In Nigeria will add GDP per capita. When you see those poor farmers come out of the bush to go on that express road to take their little cassava bales to farm, you are reducing the cost of doing business at that micro level because of that little road.
I agree with you.
That road, if you build a road from Lagos to Calabar, all those poor villages that had to walk and take palm oil kernel on their back from village A to village B will now buy a small keke and take it from village A to village B. That's productivity. Wealth is measured in productivity gain.
I think we're in agreement. I think in principle, what we're saying is who should pay for it. And I think we're in agreement that the government should do a better job, because high tech that got that contract, I don't think they're putting up the 13 billion and then collecting their revenues via a toll mechanism over the life of the project.
I just think that the whole project is we don't know anything about the project. It's shrouded in secrecy. Nigeria has borrowed.
You don't see them now.
No, I don't want you to see. I'm not the guy to throw baby with the bathwater.
Right.
Tinubu is building a road. I like the road. It will help GDP. Whether I like Tinubu or not, if that road is built, the GDP of Nigeria will double or triple.
But the point we're making is where's the money coming
but
from?
That's a different. Again, that's a different conversation. The conversation I'm making today is that the road has got to be built. Now,
hold on, Kalu, you can't have that conversation in absentia, in a vacuum of the realities on ground.
Yeah, you keep interrupting me. You keep. So
okay, go ahead.
Again, right? We've got to have the road built. Thumbs up. Now, I am also making the point that the states get 90% of VAT. Before, I don't know if you are here when we said that the states can easily create a fund where each state will take 40% of VAT, put into an infrastructure fund, and the federal government will then take its own 100% of the royalties, put into that fund, and they build the road. Right now, the road is being built through budgetary allocations, although they say it's a PPP, that Mr. Chaguri will somehow raise billions to build that. I don't think that's going to be. If you go to any bank, Nigerians are they are very positive. If you come to my bank and I'm in Deutschland or I'm in England and you tell me you want to build a road from Lagos to Calabar, I'm going to ask you, how will you pay back? I need to see a toll on the road. They're not going to wait for the budget. I want to see a ring-fenced project where if I give you money, I can hold the project to pay back. Lagos built a toll road from Lekki to Ikoyi. The road pays itself back because it's a toll road between Lekki and Ikoyi. Fantastic.
100%.
But
yes.
if you go to Lagos to Calabar, only a few sections you can toll that have money. Calabar has money. Lagos has money. Edo has money. In between that road, they're going to see stretches where you cannot toll because people are just not going to pay. They don't have the money to pay. This is the point you're making. So you've got to be smart enough to say, where would you put the tolls? Where would you start from first? That's why Calabar is being built. They are building Lagos. That's where the money is. Calabar, not Akwa Ibom. That road they are building in Akwa Ibom was always in the plan.
Yes,
they are not building that road because of a coastal road. It's always in the plan.
We're in agreement.
The productivity cliff is so steep. If you build 1 kilometer of road in Nigeria, what you are gaining back, you can't compare what in Japan or the UK or the US. We have nothing. If you put power supply, let's not take power supply.
Okay.
If you put power supply in Nigeria today, your GDP will double. If you take Japan, your GDP. Now I don't want you to. Cyrus, hop in here.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think we're in agreeing on a lot of things. One, do you need infrastructure? Yes. How you pay for that infrastructure? We know that 70% of our budget, 75% already goes to debt. Now we have like 30% or 25% left, right? So how you maximize that 25% is so important. I believe, and I think you agree, that the best way to build these roads is to execute some kind of PPP, get the private sector involved, right?
So again, we're rehashing ourselves. We're rehashing. If you are listening on the space, right, there's a building. I don't want you guys to go and rush into that building. USC building in Lagos. USC building. It's on Maloney, 1 to 5 Maloney. If you go to that building, on the wall, you'll see the picture of Lagos when Lagos was being built. USC, if you know, USC ran Nigeria of Lagos, of Marina when it was being built. When the Germans built the flyovers in Lagos, they were like little or no cars in Lagos. Those flyover bridges you see from Apapa all the way to, I think it's in Ikeja. When they built all those flyovers from Ikeja to Apapa, there was hardly any road or traffic in Lagos. But the Germans knew 25 years down the line, this is the federal capital of Nigeria, there's going to be roads are going to come all over the place. And we need to have infrastructure to accommodate those roads. What killed Lagos was that when we then had those flyover bridges, there was no infrastructure done in Lagos again. from when the built this infrastructure. Not happening again. We had Metro Line. Metro Line was never done. Imagine if Metro Line was done in Lagos in the 1980s. We won't have traffic today. Because that Metro Line would have been like in London, like London Underground. We will have no traffic today. And it's all across Nigeria. We're not talking of, listen, this argument Nnamdi you're making is where you have, in Nigeria's case, you cannot go from Lagos. If you live in Lagos in Nigeria today, you cannot go from Lagos to, say, Abia on a grade 1 expressway in the largest economy in Africa. In the largest economy in Africa, you do not get 24 hours power. So the infrastructure we're talking about is just, let's even survive. It's like I'm testing. You are saying, give me sparkly water. I just need water. Give me water first. When I drink that water, we can talk about whether it's cold or not.
No, okay. I apologize. Just as a question to you. I accede. I accept it. Now, let me ask you this. So what do you do with that human capital that we both agree?
I haven't said we shouldn't do it. I said we can chew gum and walk. We've got to invest in infrastructure and human capital. We cannot wait. There are 10 million kids walking on the street in Kano. 10 million, sorry, in the north that are quote unquote Almajiri. We cannot wait till we educate them before Kano builds flyover bridges. They have to do both at the same time. That's the point I'm making.
But we only have 25% of our budgets available.
So we cannot build in a nation with the budget. This is the point I made about America and the National Railway. That railway was built with private capital, not public capital. They passed policies to attract capital. Look at what they did. Again, they sold land to developers, and developers sold land to railway companies. Railway companies sold land to developers. No circular system.
I rest my case.
You are not wrong. Let's get Prince. Let's get Prince. Enna, I didn't know you were a prince. I know you were a doctor. Not sure you were a prince. But Enna, please go ahead.
John 1:5. I have just one question for you, Kalu. Kalu, with the current security situation of Nigeria, would you travel on the Lagos-Calabar highway?
I will not. I don't think I will. But that's a security question, and don't put me on the spot like that, Prince. Prince, you have more to give us in this discussion. Prince, please come back.
No, I've enjoyed it.
No, I want you, Prince. You have more to give. I know you. So, Prince, I think you just want to ask a question and agree with. What do you think, Prince?
I would tilt with Nnamdi because South Africa has roads, has electricity, maybe 5,000 megawatts. But the people you don't train and the people you don't raise would make you not be able to fly the road for security reasons. So I would prioritize investment in the people before I invest in infrastructure, because you cannot travel on that road if the people are not invested in the security situation. Like you just confirmed, I would not fly that road with the current security situation. Instead of build airports, America has 90,000 roads to make sure
people like that. They're supposed to have long-term, lifespan. So the idea behind is they are building them for the future, for the future users, not for yourself, right? Not for the current, not for the current.
It's not for today. It's not for today.
Right now. You're not building for today. You're building for tomorrow, for the forecast economic activity. So that's why they build those. So now I agree with you on one thing, that Nigeria, a long period of time, this is not the time. In fact, given our national national infrastructure planning as far back as 1979, that's as far back as I know the last one, I could research on. All of these rules that we're not talking about doing them, they should have been done long time ago, not today. So I understand the part of mismanagement and whatever it is that's going on in the country, but in the assumption that you're going to spend a major revenue of 25 trillion to finance, roads of 200 kilometer, 150 kilometer, that is not the way you're supposed to plan the economy, because if you're going to be undercutting things like education, things like primary health care, things like military and all that. It's just
not possible. Yeah, it's not possible, and I blame the government because it's looking as if they have to buy and borrow money. I've not heard Mr. Chagori put a cent down. See you, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hey, see you. Hi, I can hear you.
Hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Most of the time I come here to. I think last time I came, I spoke, but today I just want to ask a few questions because I'm a global macro person.
So I'm just trying to see, the topic was a review of the key macroeconomic indicators for Nigeria.
Yeah.
So first of all, in terms of growth, economic growth, my intuition on what my using economic theory, generally, if you see the average GDP growth globally, it's average around.
Honestly, can we be honest and blunt? When we had President Olusegun Obasanjo, he pursued this backward integration policy. So he told them back then, Dangote was an importer of rice and sugar. Obasanjo told everybody in Nigeria, where in 5 years, we're going to stop the import of certain products. If you're a local producer in where all the billionaires in Nigeria were supposed to go to Transcorp, and then now the first Transcorp was in the 1970s, what we call the cement armada. So we were a net importer of cement. Under Obasanjo, he said, do local backward integration. Dangote took it seriously. Lafarge and the rest did not. We're importing orange juice back in Nigeria. We used to have Five Alive. People remember there was something called Five Alive in Nigeria. We don't see it anymore. We now had Chi. Chi had not been bought by the same company that used to import Five Alive, which is Coca-Cola. She had not been bought again, right? Things were substituted from import to local, and it worked. Like you're right, it worked because we would pick a sector, do import substitution, and move on. Then we stopped, and right today is that Dangote has built a $20 billion refinery, and people are fighting him because they know if you allow Dangote, let me tell you people something. In 5 years, Dangote is going to break it to the top. You see Mark Zuckerberg. He has too much scale. He's in the largest economy in Africa, and he's selling a utility product you need. You need gas. You need and scaling and getting richer. So certain people that are very highly placed in Nigeria are fighting. They want to cut him down to size, not to allow him to become too powerful. If not that Dangote was Dangote. You remember that Kogi State took away his factory? Remember? Kogi State company in Bloomberg. So in companies in America, they own Dangote Cement, American companies. So suddenly they wake up on Monday and they hear that a local House of Assembly, not federal, a local House of Assembly in Nigeria has made their investment towards free market concept, right? But there is no free market on earth. There is none. In America, I remember when American government had a bid for aircraft refuelers, Boeing and Airbus applied. Airbus won the contract. The American Senate canceled the contract. John McCain canceled the contract. They did the contract again. Then Boeing won. You see what I'm saying? So there's no free market in the world. Every market, including America, protects its own indigenous players. There's no way America will allow Airbus, no matter how good the plane is, to displace Boeing.
So the last question I want to ask you, Kalu, is I'm trying to wrap my head around interest rates coming below targets, then rates should go. We've seen in Nigeria now where the data shows that inflation is coming down. Let's call it disinflation. But these guys are being very hawkish. So now, in my opinion, in my own thinking, I'm just wondering, are the people running this monetary policy, are they interested in the so-called carry trade?
No.
Because I think Nigeria is a carry trade opportunity if you're a hedge fund, basically. So where you can borrow, for example, we borrow cheaply in the yen, the Japanese yen, you can invest in the higher rate naira, something like that.
Questions are designed to put us in trouble. Dying. What's the point of all that? So I agree.
We need monetary expansion, what you're saying.
Correct. We need to ease. If it has to be that we target in a way, maybe we say we're going to focus on reverse VAT, or we're going to say that if you invest in power, they tend to be traditional, whilst the economy is going through a storm. It's like you saying, I'm going to build my house. I'll build my high walls. I will pay my taxes. I'll respect the authorities. My neighbors can go to hell. You have to drive out of your house to go to work. Like, Noah Prince asked the question, would you go on that road if it's not safe? It's the same thing. Well, if the economy is not consuming, Nigerians are not consuming. We don't buy new cars, new air conditioners. We don't buy new fridge. If we're not consuming and the CBN has NPR at 27%, Keuruoba, as Igbo say, Keuruoba. What's the point of having macroeconomics that are fantastic, but people cannot afford to consume? What's the point? You see?
But that consumption was under Buhari. I think it fell almost 7% from 2019.
It was negative, not 7%. It was negative.
Sorry.
It was negative, not 7%.
Okay.
Nigerians are not consuming. The biggest problem today in Nigeria is the lack of consumption. If you don't get Nigerians consuming, after 9/11, what did President Bush tell Americans after 9/11? What did he tell them? Go out and shop. Why did he say go out and shop?
Where we have lower rates now.
Just have not shopped. The economy has crashed. That's why all the companies are leaving Nigeria, because you're not buying their thing. Go to ShopRite. You can't afford. Nigerians can't afford anything imported. It's too expensive.
Kalu, for you.
Doc, please, Prince, go ahead.
So election is next year, 2027, and prior to election, investors either portfolio or direct government. And from what you CBN or monetary policy that goes totally in a different direction with our macroeconomics. Because if you look at Buhari, a new government, and that goes in a totally different direction.
I think if whoever is going to be president of America tomorrow in 2028, they will still pick up kids by 7 a.m. with the yellow buses. ER will still run, and their things will still operate. Whoever is president. When the military was here, we had industrial plans where we had National Industrial Plan 1, 2, and 3. Under Obasanjo, we had Vision 2020. I think the problem today is that we don't have a long-term vision, and we don't have a funding for the long-term vision. That's why President Tinubu can come to office, look at the east-west road that is uncompleted, and then start the similar coastal road that will spend more than the east-west road. If Nigeria had a policy and a project management framework, then he would have completed the east-west road and then linked the east-west road, of course, to Lagos. That would have been the natural thing to do. He might have even said, okay, I'm going to start the east-west railway that Goodluck started and completed. But if you do that, what's the effect to him? Goodluck started the Abuja to Kaduna railway. He built the whole rail. He imported the carriages. He even rode the carriages. Then Buhari came to office, and Buhari's people said Buhari built Abuja to Kaduna railway. They even shared the video.
Hello.
So hold up, Amir. So Tinubu wants to have a legacy project. He wants to have. It's not, and that's Prince, where you are going to. That we have personalities and not plans and programs. Everybody, if Tinubu goes today, I assure you, Coastal Road is going to die. I assure you, as night follows day, Coastal Road will die. They might go back to East-West Road, but they will not continue the Coastal Road. And everybody here knows it. So why do we have plans that are personality-based? Why not come an all stakeholders meeting of Nigeria and say, what are the infrastructure projects today that every Nigerian will agree on? Nigeria, there is no railway going from the east to the west. British, apart from the one that Goodluck built from Abuja to Kaduna, and the one IBB built from Ajaokuta to Ilaje, or the one that is Kano. They are all not connected. If you take a standard railway from Lagos, you stop at Ibadan, you can't go further because it is narrow gauge. Lagos to Ibadan is standard gauge. If you go from Abuja to Kaduna, you go standard gauge from Abuja, you stop at Kaduna, you can't go further. Maradi to Kano is standard gauge. Kano to up to Ibadan is narrow gauge. The railway in the middle of Nigeria, the Abeokuta to Warri railway, is standard gauge. All over it is narrow gauge. The one beside it in Aba is narrow gauge. So you have railways 3,000 kilometers. You can't go on them. To go from Lagos to Calabar by railway, you first go to Kaduna and then come back to Lagos. So if you simply say, let's have a railway project that links up every city in Nigeria, that's a project Nigeria will support. Then you say, we're going to have a special fund, 10% to fund that railway. Every Nigerian will support that project, irrespective of political party, whoever wins, who doesn't win. But we don't have that in Nigeria, Prince. That's the problem. So if Tinubu wins the next election, he was going to scrap his entire team. He will now bring in his real expert, because now he knows He's not going to go for re-election. He only has 4 years. He will try to rush. You can't build a east-west railway or coastal road in 4 years. I'm laughing at these boys on Twitter that are sharing their east-to-west road in 4 years. Even if you have the money, it's just not possible. But you guys you want to help Tinubu. He didn't ask for your help. He's an accountant. He knows. But you want you guys to say, President Tinubu, we can't build the whole road. Let's build Lagos to Ogun or Edo. Make it beautiful and stop there. Let the next president continue from Edo to Delta. That's how you build the road. The Trans Railway we're talking about in America was not built by one administration. It wasn't. But Nigeria, we say, no, Tinubu is he will build. How can he build a road from Lagos to Calabar in 4 years? And you guys are the ones putting the man up for, when the man doesn't build, they say, but you're not being reasonable with the man. See you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to ask.
See you. When did you join? Honestly,
No. I'm talking in terms of if
the whole space. See you. It's about this oil price. And again, see if you want to really know. I did a YouTube video. It's go to my YouTube channel. You see where I did the dollar price of oil.
Yeah.
I linked it back to macroeconomic. But this space is talking about the review and the forecast of key macro indicators. Yeah, and the key thing we said is this oil price. This $64 a barrel is astro tough.
Okay.
It's astro tough. It's a big problem. We want to spend in Nigeria. They're already at 60. See, we're already at 60.
I think is it WTI or
Brent? Brent is at 60
right now.
No. Brent is at 60. Are you saying it's low? Has it gone lower? Are you saying it's gone lower?
I'm looking at right now the oil. I don't want to turn the oil markets open, but I'm seeing around $50, $57, $58 per barrel
for Brent
right now. I think
I would say go and hold your dollar.
For an economy like Nigeria,
1 to 100 in terms of doing his job according to his CV. I will give him his CV. The whole idea of being of change is that you don't follow your CV. What I mean your CV, your what they've told you to do. If you come to Nigeria, an economy creates jobs, and you work with the CBN's balance sheet to work with the SMEs to create growth that can fight inflation for him. There are two ways to fight inflation. You can cut down money supply, or you can increase the supply of goods and services. The CBN goods and services. If you use and services and he abandoned MPR, he paid the price because he was corrupt. This guy doesn't seem to be corrupt, but I think he's with just MPR. I give the example of onions in Jigawa. You print 100 trillion % Naira today. Jigawa onions will not go up in price and will not come down. It doesn't correlate. The MPR does not affect the price of goods and services in Jigawa onions because there's a supply, a glut of no inflation. If there's yam everywhere, there will be no inflation. If there's PMS everywhere, there will be no
England from 2013 to 2020. So if you say two things, if you say the person does not need to be an economist, I buy into that. Can you also say we can give that seat to a foreigner like England did? And I would say this, Kalu, you are the next CBN governor after this one.
Amen. Hallelujah. But seriously, sir, I think anyone that can do the job, we should bring him. If we can hire foreign coaches, understands how we can create jobs. That's what I need for the CBN governor. Because if that person understands, he would then say, I'm going to focus on power generation. If you want to create jobs in Nigeria, do power supply. We don't need your help. Get out of the way, government. If you put power supply in any state in Nigeria, jobs will double. They don't need your help. In many countries, you have to go and beg people, hey, start a job. Nigerians are already doing jobs. Look at the kids of Nigeria. They created Nollywood. No government help. They created Nollywood on their own. It grew to be bigger than Hollywood. Only Bollywood is beating Nollywood. From Nigeria. No government plan, no policy, just on their own. Look at fintech. The kids of tech, the kids of Nigeria. They didn't need no government help. Innocent, no government help. He created it. He went to pass the laws, policies, do it level playing fields. That's what Nigerians need. We don't need the government. Let me even give you a quote. I hope you guys quote me. If you remove government, not saying you should remove the government, I beg you. If you take the government out of the way, there's no ministry of, no commissioner of, just take government out of the way, Nigeria's GDP will go up. The government is a drag on GDP. We've had spaces here now. We've had spaces here many times. You remember a guy that came here and said that he exports yam, but to export the yam head and goes to Ghana, plants Nigerian yam head in Ghana, then the yam will grow, then he will take that yam, export that yam as Ghanaian yam to Canada. Because Nigerian yam is different from Ghanaian yam. People like Nigerian yam, but he can't export yam from Nigeria. A guy said it here. Look at Landmark Beach. You can argue that the beach was on the road, not the road, but I'm telling you, in America, they would never have demolished that resort. Never. There was a road behind Landmark now. There was a road from here to, they would not have demolished Landmark. They wouldn't. So it's hard to do business in Nigeria. We need a CBN that can understand how to create jobs. If we have that kind of person, GDP has to go up. When Okonjo-Iweala was here, it's because of Okonjo-Iweala today we know how much our state gets. She did what's it called? Where they got all the ministers had to you get your salaries through biometrics. So we removed ghost workers. She removed ghost workers. She did TSA. Before her, the ministry of one bank will hold account for 10 ministries, and the other ministry will come and borrow. She did TSA. One book woman. So it's not that book is bad, but the book has got to be applied to Nigeria. Nigeria is a very, very unique economy. You can't come to Nigeria and just speak English. You must know it in Nigeria. Does the policy get out of the way? You want to tax solar. Government want to tax solar. I don't know what to say, guys. Guys, we'll spend some good time here. I think we had some good conversations. CY, thanks for hopping in here and doing us the honors of taking us back to the macroeconomics. I just shared, for most of you that were asking me on Twitter, where am I getting this resource number that I'm quoting? I shared on Twitter, if you go on Twitter, I just shared it out. You'll see the CBN's projection from, I think so, 2020 revenues. I said Tinubu got money from crude oil. I see lots of people saying it's not true, Kalu. Tinubu got his money from non-oil. Tinubu said he got money from non-oil. I'm not giving you projection. And we were able to grow 60.22. Why in God's name are you doing a budget with 64? Why? Do it with 60 at least. If the oil gets to 65, that's fine. You've made buffers. But if Brent crude today, this is before the invasion of Venezuela, it's at 60. Before the invasion, it's at 60. Why are you doing your budget at 64? I mean, do you have to be a genius to know how to bring the thing down? And why is it important? If you don't bring it down, you are going to say you want to spend all this money and you don't have the revenues. Nigeria's problem is that we want to spend money we don't have. We don't have this money. Why are we spending 54 or 58 trillion? Why are we spending? We don't have the money. Why are we borrowing 2 trillion a month? Why? I see the road it's beautiful, it's cement. I want it, but you can't afford it. I want a Rolls Royce, but I can't afford it. You can't say because the road is good, you go and do it. You don't have the money for it. You have Badagry to Lagos Intercontinental Highway. You have Lagos to Calabar Coastal Road. You don't have the money. Look at your budget. You have a deficit of 23 trillion, which means you're going to borrow 2 trillion a month. This is just because you're going to sell oil at 64. So if oil is 60, this deficit will go up maybe 3 trillion a month. How can you have a budget like this? How? It doesn't make any sense. Why are you borrowing? Tinubu was given, let me give you figures. When Buhari left office, he gave Tinubu revenues of 7 trillion. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tinubu took that revenue to 20, going from 7 to 20. When Buhari left office, he gave Tinubu spending of 6.9 trillion. 6.9. Guess what Tinubu is spending today? What I mean today is at 2014, 2024. Guess what Tinubu spent in 2024? 38 trillion. Or what? How do you go from 7 trillion spending to 38 trillion? Somebody says, Kalu, the spending is from devaluation. Yes, but he also got revenues from devaluation. Yes, the naira went lost value, but he got more money from the oil too. So we don't use for infrastructure. Tinubu allocated 13 trillion for infrastructure in 2024. He only gave them 6 trillion, but he borrowed 12 trillion. Why are you borrowing 12 trillion when you're only giving them 6 trillion? Where did that money go to? Where's that money? This is not, I'm not, actual numbers from the federal government of Nigeria. The macroeconomics don't make sense. If Nigeria does not reduce her fiscal ambitions, it's going to affect you individually. So I will ask you as an individual investor to be very careful about how you spend money in 2026. Remember, one of the exemptions in 2026 is that if you have foreign revenues, it's tax-free, which means if I take my Nigerian naira asset that pays me dollars as a dividend, and I bring that dividend back to Nigeria through approved channels, that dividends I'm bringing back is tax-free. Take advantage of that. Make sure you are diversifying your revenue sources away from naira into other avenues. And like Cyrus said at the very beginning, 30%, make sure you watch before you leap. This is not a year you want to take quick actions. Make sure you are watching before you leap in. The government's books are not good because they are not planning properly. They have large ambitions. You've got to be a bit more prudent than the government. I think they are depending on the tax reform to bring them money. But the tax reform, the money is going to go to states, not federal. Why Tinubu is not saying this, I don't know. There are so many of these guys on Twitter that are not explaining to people that the tax money is going to states, not federal. Tinubu is giving you, it's your state, go and hold your state government on their neck. They are the ones getting this. So if you know this macro picture, it should guide you in how you are investing. Don't be too quick to invest. Don't be too quick to take large risks. Take it easy. Let's see how the first term plays out. Let's see what's going to happen before we take issues. Big E, you hopped in real quick. Let's see what you have to say before we close down the space. Big E, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Kalu, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Mr. Kalu, first of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir.
Thank you for so much you've been doing here. I really, really, really grateful around that. So you just mentioned something, and that's actually why I even popped it. You talked about earning abroad as regards products. So I was going to ask, does it also include for people who work remotely? Probably you work remotely and you're paid from abroad.
Yeah.
Is that also free from tax?
Yeah, that's an export. What they are saying is that any export earnings is tax-free today, right? That's what they're saying. So what you want to make sure that you are earning that money outside Nigeria. So let's say you work remotely. Let's say you work for outsourcing, right? Make sure that you are paid abroad. So don't do job and somebody will pay you in Nigeria, right? Make sure you are paid abroad. Then bring that money through approved channels back to Nigeria. So if you are paid abroad, I think Western Union is an approved channel. Just let the money come to Nigerian bank, then key it in your income and say, hey, this is income from export. Yes, it's tax-free. Tax exempt.
Okay, so sorry, just to clarify, when you mean paid abroad, does that include probably paid through a fintech, maybe probably a fintech app or anything or whatever?
Yeah, just show that the money came from abroad. Because sometimes somebody will hire you in Nigeria, then you work for Amazon, but then you are paid in Nigeria the equivalent. So they will pay you maybe 2 million naira through your GT Bank. They'll just create GT Bank. That's not what they want. You see what I'm saying? You might work for a company that's outsourcing you to Amazon, then Amazon will pay them, then they will pay you naira. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that you are earning that from your fintech app abroad or your DOM account or your bank account or money. So you want to make sure that you can show that remittance. That's where I'm going to with that. Yeah.
Second, tax-free, just like agricultural products, probably importing.
What tax? When you import, you don't pay tax. You pay excise duties. You pay VAT. So what tax are you talking about? Because if your company on that. You understand? So you have to be very specific. Are you important as a person, as an individual? As a company or as an individual? As a company, your company has its own tax allowances, tax exempt, and expenses you can back out of the income from those taxes. So you want to be very, very clear on that. But VAT, I don't think would apply on certain basic necessities like food and all that if it's raw form. So make sure you clear that up with your tax person. Yeah.
That's clear enough. Thank you so much.
Hey, welcome, man. Austin, real quick, then we'll close.
Oh yes. I just want to ask this question before you close, please. At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned, CBN's GDP projection, and so reminded us that this is not very ambitious, looking at an annual growth rate of 3%.
Yeah.
I'm worried about one thing. Since our population figure since 2006 has been based on estimates, do you think these are real things to rely on? I don't know, because the last time Nigeria conducted a population census and then put our population at approximately 140 million, I think it was in 2006, about 20 or so years ago. I'm wondering, in your own opinion, what do you think is the real reason why we are not conducting official census figures in Nigeria to guide our national planning in a correct way, in a more reliable way? Do you think, is this politics or is it finance or is it logic?
Yeah, I got your question, but you had an audio call. I had to mute you. I think census in Nigeria is not an economic tool. It's a. Let me mute you. You're still speaking. I'm going to mute you. Also, you have a call coming in, so I'm muting you. So again, I'm just trying to be. I'm just trying to be blunt. Just trying to be blunt with people and give you guys the truth. I did a report on census nearly 10 years ago. I looked at the census figures from the last census was done 1969. No, 1958. Before Nigeria was independent, they did a census. So from 58 till I believe it was the last census, 2014 or so. What I found out was shocking. Nigeria's census has not changed. There is no change in the census. The numbers have gone up, but there is no change. According to Nigeria's census, there is no migration from the north to the south, from the east to the west. Nothing. Everyone that was born in Nigeria in 1960 has stayed where they are. Nigeria is the only country on earth that more people live away from the coast than live on the coast. Nigeria is the only nation on earth that more people live away from the coast that live on the coast. There's no change. So you see the number will go from 10 million to 50 million, but the percentage has not changed. It's still 55% to one region from that time till today, the same percentage. So what's that tell you? 55% is a magic number. If you are smart and you look at things in Nigeria, 55% will come up everywhere. There are 55% of this, 55% of that, 55% of this. It does not change. And that's why the census is useless in Nigeria, because when you do a census, the number will go up, but the demographics don't change. Lagos does not get new population. Lagos State, I got Nigerian census, does not get new population. People don't come to Lagos. It's the same number. I'm giving the numbers, and if you doubt it, pick up the census, compare two census, and see the percentage change. In America, every year they do census, and why does number not change? Because in Nigeria, we share revenues according to population and landmass. So if you want to share FAC, this FAC we're talking about, or VAT, how do we share VAT and FAC? How? Your minimum responsibility of state is 40%. That means once you are a state, you're going to get 40%. You wouldn't do anything, you're going to get 40%. Then your population is 30%. So just being a state with large population, you get 70%. What about education, water, health? All this combined is less than 5%. Education, water, health, access to all that combined, primary school is less than 5%. So if you're a governor, you are incentivized to have more children, not to train your children. This is the Nigerian revenue allocation formula. I'm telling you, I didn't write it. That's why you will see fights on population. This tax bill you guys are talking about, when did you guys hear about it? Wasn't it when governors started talking about sharing VAT? Because Tinubu wanted to change how VAT was shared. He said, let's do VAT by 60% derivation. The governors went crazy. Because today it's 70% from minimum responsibility of states, 30% from population. He said, let's do 60% derivation. It went crazy. That's how you guys knew about Tax Reform Act. If not, you would have heard about it. When the governors were fighting about derivation, once he gave the governors what they wanted, they went back. They don't care. They don't care. They don't really care about the tax reform anymore. That's the point. So Nigeria is not structured properly. If you're a governor and you spend your money educating your children in primary school, giving them clean water, and giving them health care, you only get about 4% from FAC. But if you have more babies, put them on the street, you get 30%. If you just the state, you get 40%. If you not understand what I mean. That's how the country is structured. That's why the census are very, very important. So because we always fight, we've never agreed on the census. But Nigerian census does not make any sense whatsoever. Lagos State had to go and do their own census a few years ago, and their census showed them having a bigger number than Kano, which is where the fight was. But how can you say Kano has more than Lagos? It doesn't make any sense, right? So Lagos, of course, in my view, has higher population. So Lagos had to go and do their own census a long time ago, and they were the largest population. So Nigerian census is like Nigerian unemployment numbers. The numbers are there, but if you rely on them, good luck. That's just what I'll say, Biggie. There are other things you can use to know population. You can use number of calls on GSM, where the calls going to. You can use number of cars in that state, who has cars, by number of applications for JAMB. All those are proxy to population. If you use those numbers, it gives you a totally different number than population. I mean, JAMB scores, you can say, okay, they don't go to school. Okay, what about primary school enrollment? They don't go to school. So what do you use? You have to be a bit, I don't know. But Nigeria's a funny country. Let's leave it that way. All right, folks, thank you so much. I think we had a great space today. Again, we've shared knowledge, just always our intent. We want to share personal finance, the economy, and of course, finance with you every week. And we're leading you up. We're doing now the macroeconomics. By next week, we're going to bring in the finance guys. Hey, where should we invest our money? Should we do bonds? Should we do shares and all that? Nigerian shares last year, 2025, did 51%. They beat inflation. So if you bought Nigerian shares, the index, you beat inflation. If you did bonds, you did dollar, you didn't beat inflation. If you did dollar in Nigeria, you didn't beat inflation. But if you held dollar, you beat inflation. So we have to get the experts in to tell us how we should invest our monies in 2026. That's what we're going to do next Sunday. So we've gone from macro now. We're now going to the micro. And then we'll keep on doing the tax reform and all that. My tax reform story for you is that the money is going to your state governors. So go and hold your state governors to account. I know federal is a big target. I talk about federal all the time, but hold your state governments to account. They're going to get nearly 90% of VAT. They're going to get payee. They're going to share CIT. So they should also account for this huge money they're going to get. On that note, guys, let me let you guys go. It's going to be a great Monday for you guys, a great week. Make sure to take advantage of that plan. I'm going to list my top things for 2026, what you should learn to do in 2026. That's going to also guide you. It's all about just having knowledge of a crowd, right? So if the crowd is saying something, the crowd is usually right. If the crowd they're usually right. So try to have the safety and the comfort of a crowd in where you are investing and what you are hearing. In the Bible, there's safety in numbers. So try to ask people. It doesn't have to be Kalu. Ask people what they think about stuff that's going on. The crowd is usually right. Let's leave it that way. All right, folks, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys here next week, 7 p.m. Do get my book, Let's Talk About Your Money is Perfect. We had the tax law in my book 2 years before they passed the Tax Reform Act. All the exemptions are already in my book. So get the book, read it. It will bless you. Have a good one, guys. Take care and bye.